What happens when the past refuses to stay buried and begins to hunt the future? Welcome to part 2 of The Price of Hidden Sins. David and Mary stood outside the small hut, their hearts pounding. The journey had led them here, to Okeny, the last known descendant of the murdered family. David cleared his throat and called out, "Hello? Is anyone home?" For a moment, there was silence. Then the door creaked open, and an old man stepped out. He studied them carefully, his face unreadable. He was Okeny. "Who are you?" he asked in a deep, raspy voice. "My name is David Olum. This is my sister Mary. We have come from Bona village." At the mention of Bona, Olobo's eyes narrowed. "I know that name," he said slowly. "Olum, that is a name with blood on it." Mary's hands trembled. "Sir, we have come to ask for your forgiveness." Okeny did not respond immediately. Instead, he turned and walked back into his hut. "Come in," he said. David and Mary followed, sitting nervously on the woven mats inside. The air was thick with unspoken words. Olobo sat down across from them. "Tell me why you are here," he said. David took a deep breath and began to speak. He told the old man everything. How 5 members of their family had died of the same sickness. How the villagers whispered about a curse. How their grandmother had finally revealed the truth about the massacre. "We did not know," David said, his voice low. "We were never told. But now that we do, we want to make things right." Olobo listened in silence. His face remained expressionless. When David finished, the old man sighed deeply and closed his eyes. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Olobo finally said, "I was told this story when I was a child. My grandfather, one of the few who survived, never forgot what happened. They killed my family in their sleep. They left their bodies to rot. And now you come to ask for forgiveness?" David lowered his head in shame. "We know it will not bring them back, but we want peace. We want to end the curse." Olobo stared at them for a long time. Then he said, "Forgiveness is not given with words. It must be earned." "What must we do?" asked Mary. Olobo stood up slowly and said, "There is a ritual. If you are truly sorry, you must do it." David and Mary exchanged a nervous glance. If they wanted to break the curse, they would have to face the past in the way the spirits demanded. David and Mary sat in silence, waiting for Okeny to explain what needed to be done. The old man looked at them carefully before speaking. "There is an old tradition," he said. "When blood is spilled unjustly, the spirits do not rest until the earth is cleansed. To break the curse, you must return to the land where the killings happened. You must offer a sacrifice and ask for forgiveness, not just from me, but from the spirits of my ancestors." "You mean we have to go back to Bona?" David asked. Olobo nodded. "Yes. You must go to the very place where my grandfather's family was murdered. The land remembers the blood that was shed." "What kind of sacrifice do we need to make?" asked Mary. Olobo took a deep breath. "A white goat, a calabash of millet flour, and a pot of traditional beer. These things represent purity, life, and reconciliation." David and Mary exchanged nervous glances. This was bigger than anything they had imagined. Would the spirits truly listen? Would this really end the curse? Olobo must have sensed their hesitation. He leaned forward and said, "If you do not do this, the spirits will not stop. The curse will follow your children and their children after them. You cannot escape the past unless you face it." David nodded. They had no choice. "We will do it," he said. Olobo stood up and walked to the back of his hut. When he returned, he was holding something. A small old piece of cloth. It was stained and torn, but the color was still visible. Red. "This," he said, handing it to David, "belonged to my great-grandfather. He was wearing it the night he was murdered." David hesitated before taking it. The fabric felt heavy, as if it carried the weight of history. "Bring this to the land of my ancestors," Olobo said. "When you make the sacrifice, place it on the ground. Let the spirits know you have come in peace." Mary wiped tears from her eyes. "Will you come with us?" she asked. Olobo shook his head. Number, this is for you to do, but when it is done, you must return to me. David and Mary stood up. They had their task. Now they had to return to the land where the blood had been spilled, and hope that the spirits were listening. The journey back to Pibona was filled with silence. David and Mary carried the items Olobo had instructed them to bring: a white goat, a calabash of millet flour, and a pot of traditional beer. But the most important item was the blood-stained cloth from Olobo's great-grandfather. They could feel its weight in the small bag Mary carried. It was more than just fabric. It was history, pain, and the memory of a life taken unjustly. When they arrived in Pibona, the sun was setting. The village was quiet, but as they passed through, some of the elders watched them closely, as if they knew what was about to happen. David stopped at their grandmother's hut. Olum was waiting for them. "You have returned," she said softly. "Yes, Jaja," David answered. "We know what must be done." Ajak nodded. "The land remembers everything, my children. Do not take this lightly." She led them through a narrow path toward the area where the massacre had happened. It was a field of old trees and thick grass, untouched for generations. "We have arrived," she whispered. David and Mary looked around. The air felt different here, heavy, charged with something unseen. Mary shivered. "Do you feel that?" David nodded. The place felt alive, but not in a good way. Ajak took a deep breath and said, "We must begin before nightfall." David tied the white goat to a small tree, while Mary placed the calabash of millet flour and the pot of beer on the ground. Ajak took the blood-stained cloth and spread it on the earth. Then she lifted her hands to the sky and began to speak in a low, trembling voice. "Spirits of the Okeny family, hear us. We come not as enemies, but as children, seeking peace." David and Mary followed her lead. Kneeling before the offering, David spoke next. "We are sorry for what was done to your family. Our ancestors took lives that were not theirs to take. We have come to return what was stolen and to ask for forgiveness. Please do not let the sins of our forefathers destroy our family." "We ask for mercy," said Mary. As the last word left her lips, a strong wind blew through the trees. The fire they had lit flickered violently, and for a moment the entire place went silent. Then, a whisper. It did not come from any of them. It came from the trees, the earth, the air itself. David's heart pounded. Was this the spirits answering? Ajak reached for the goat, lifted a small knife, and made a clean cut. The animal gave a final cry before falling still. The sacrifice was complete. Ajak dipped her fingers in the blood and sprinkled it on the ground. "Now we wait," she whispered. David and Mary stared at the stained earth, holding their breath. Had the spirits accepted their plea, or had they just made things worse? Ajak Olum, their grandmother, remained still, her eyes fixed on the blood-stained ground. Then suddenly, the air changed. The heaviness that had pressed on their chests lifted, and an eerie silence followed. The night no longer felt haunted. Ajak nodded slowly. "It is done." David and Mary exhaled, their hearts still racing. "How do you know?" Mary asked. Ajak pointed to the white goat's blood that had soaked into the ground. It was disappearing. "The spirits have accepted," she said. "If they had not, the earth would have rejected the blood." David felt a strange warmth in his chest. For the first time in years, he did not feel the shadow of death over his family. At dawn, David and Mary traveled back to Potter to inform Olobo Okeny of what had happened. When they arrived at his hut, the old man was already waiting outside, as if he had sensed the ritual's success. "You did it," Olobo said, studying their faces. David nodded. "The spirits accepted our offering. The curse is broken." Olobo sighed deeply, his eyes glistening with emotion. For years, his ancestors had cried for justice. Now they could finally rest. "I never thought I would see this day," Olobo said. He reached out and touched David's shoulder. "Go in peace. Let the past rest and build a new future." Mary's voice trembled as she spoke. Can you forgive us? Olobo looked at them for a long time. Then he nodded. Forgiveness does not erase the past, but it allows us to move forward. David and Mary bowed their heads in respect. The burden of generations had been lifted. It was time for healing. When David and Mary returned to Koboko, a sense of peace had settled over their home. For the first time in years, their family did not live in the fear of the sickness. Weeks turned into months, and no more deaths followed. The curse had ended. David sat outside one evening, watching the sun set over the fields. His mind replayed everything: the truth about his ancestors, the pain of the Okeny family, and the ritual that had changed everything. His family had been given a second chance, and they would never take it for granted. As the wind brushed against his face, he whispered, "Thank you." Somewhere, in the unseen world, the spirits of the past finally rested, and life, for the Olum family, began on a fresh sheet. Moral lesson of the story: the past cannot be erased, but it can be healed through truth, forgiveness, and reconciliation. Hiding past wrongs brings suffering, but facing them brings peace. When we seek forgiveness with a sincere heart, we free ourselves and future generations from pain. Honesty, justice, and unity keep families and communities strong. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more.